Have you ever wondered what darkness lurks beneath the badge of those sworn to protect us? What happens when duty, desire, and deadly obsession collide in the heart of a trusted officer? The year was 2018, and the Phoenix Police Department stood as a testament to law and order, its ranks filled with dedicated officers who pledged their lives to serve and protect. Among them was Jessica Simmons, a 34-year-old veteran whose reputation gleamed as brightly as her badge. Her colleagues knew her as the embodiment of precision, a methodical investigator whose unwavering dedication had earned her countless commendations over her decade-long career. Each morning, as the Arizona sun painted the sky in hues of amber and gold, Jessica would don her uniform with the same meticulous attention to detail that defined her entire existence. Her life was a carefully constructed fortress of routine and professional excellence, until one fateful assignment threatened to shatter everything she had built. Welcome to True Crime Stories Archive, your gateway to the chilling world of real-life horror. Here, we delve into the darkest corners of humanity, unearthing terrifying stories of true crime that will leave you sleeping with the lights on. Before we continue with this haunting tale, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell to never miss an episode of true crime that pushes the boundaries of human nature. The story begins with a simple departmental decision, one that would ultimately spiral into a web of desire, betrayal, and murder. In early 2018, the department paired Jessica with Laura Mitchell, a rising star 5 years her junior. Laura possessed an infectious energy that complemented Jessica's calculated approach, creating what their superiors believed would be an ideal partnership. At 29, Laura Mitchell had already carved out a remarkable reputation within the force. Despite her relatively brief 5-year tenure, she had demonstrated an exceptional aptitude for police work that caught the attention of her superiors. Her approach to law enforcement combined youthful enthusiasm with a sharp tactical mind, earning her rapid advancement and the respect of her peers. The dynamics between Jessica and Laura initially seemed promising, their contrasting personalities creating a balance that enhanced their effectiveness in the field. October 2018 marked a pivotal moment when Laura extended an invitation that would set in motion a chain of devastating events. She invited Jessica to share a meal at the home she shared with her husband, Nick Mitchell. Nick Mitchell, at 35, had established himself as a respected figure in the cybersecurity industry. His position at a prominent local firm showcased his expertise in digital protection, a field that was becoming increasingly crucial in modern law enforcement. Throughout their 7-year marriage, Laura had often spoken of Nick with unmistakable pride, painting a portrait of a supportive spouse who understood and embraced the demands of her dangerous profession. Living in their modest yet welcoming residence in Scottsdale, Arizona, the Mitchells had created what appeared to be an enviable life together. Their home reflected the comfortable stability of a successful professional couple, with Laura's police accolades displayed alongside Nick's technological achievements. For Jessica, who had chosen a solitary existence focused entirely on her career, the invitation represented a rare opportunity to experience the warmth of a home life she had never prioritized. The evening began innocuously enough, with casual conversation flowing between the two partners as they discussed memorable cases and shared amusing anecdotes from their time on the force. The atmosphere was relaxed, exactly what Jessica had anticipated from a friendly dinner with a colleague. However, the introduction of Nick Mitchell into the equation transformed the entire dynamic in ways that none of them could have predicted. From the moment Nick entered the room, an imperceptible shift occurred in the atmosphere. His presence carried a quiet authority that immediately captured Jessica's attention. While Laura radiated an energetic enthusiasm that filled any room she entered, Nick possessed a measured calmness that seemed to create its own gravitational pull. His deep, resonant voice and thoughtful manner of speaking struck a chord within Jessica that she hadn't expected and couldn't ignore. As the evening progressed, Jessica found herself increasingly drawn to Nick's presence. His intelligent observations and careful attention to detail mirrored her own analytical nature. The way he listened, truly listened, to every word spoken created an intimacy in their interactions that both thrilled and disturbed her. Despite her professional training in maintaining emotional distance, Jessica found herself powerless against the growing attraction. During these initial encounters, Nick's behavior, while never crossing professional boundaries, revealed subtle signs of mutual attraction. His gaze would linger a fraction too long during conversations with Jessica, and his engagement in their discussions carried an intensity that spoke of something deeper than mere politeness. The comfortable silence that descended whenever Laura momentarily left the room became charged with unspoken tension, a peculiar electricity that both Jessica and Nick recognized but dared not acknowledge. The progression of their connection followed a dangerous trajectory. Each subsequent visit to the Mitchell home added another layer to the complex web of emotions developing between Jessica and Nick. Their interactions, though outwardly innocent, carried undertones of a deepening emotional intimacy that threatened to rupture the careful facade of propriety they maintained. By the close of 2018, Jessica found herself trapped in an emotional labyrinth of her own making. Her growing feelings for Nick had evolved from a simple attraction into something far more consuming. She attempted to rationalize her emotions, telling herself that these feelings would eventually fade, that they were harmless as long as they remained unspoken. Yet each passing day only strengthened her attachment to Nick, making it increasingly difficult to maintain her professional composure. The situation grew more complicated in early 2019 when circumstances conspired to bring Jessica and Nick into closer proximity. The catalyst came in the form of work-related circumstances that required their collaboration. Laura's involvement in administrative duties and other cases created natural opportunities for Jessica to work independently, and Nick's expertise in cybersecurity made him an invaluable resource for certain investigations. February 2019 marked a significant turning point when a local bank reported a series of sophisticated cyber attacks. With Laura occupied by another pressing case, Jessica took the lead on the investigation. The technical nature of the crime necessitated specialized knowledge, and Nick's expertise made him the obvious choice for consultation. This professional collaboration provided them with legitimate reasons to interact outside of Laura's presence, adding another layer of complexity to their already complicated dynamic. Their work together on the bank case began professionally, with both Jessica and Nick demonstrating their respective expertise. Jessica's sharp investigative skills complemented Nick's deep understanding of cybersecurity systems, creating an effective partnership that yielded promising results. However, beneath the surface of their professional collaboration, the undercurrent of attraction continued to strengthen. As they spent countless hours analyzing data and pursuing leads, their conversations inevitably strayed beyond the boundaries of work-related discussions. The sterile environment of the investigation room became a sanctuary where their connection deepened, far from Laura's watchful eyes. Their shared time together allowed them to discover layers of compatibility that went far beyond physical attraction. By March 2019, their relationship had evolved into something that teetered precariously on the edge of impropriety. Nick began confiding in Jessica about personal matters, sharing his frustrations about work and the mounting pressures of managing his team. More significantly, he revealed the growing strain in his marriage to Laura, painting a picture of a relationship that had lost its initial spark. These intimate conversations created a false sense of emotional intimacy, drawing them closer while simultaneously widening the gulf between Nick and Laura. Jessica absorbed every word of Nick's confessions, her heart racing with a mixture of guilt and anticipation. Each revelation about his marital struggles felt like a validation of her feelings, fueling her belief that their connection was somehow meant to be. The weight of her emotional betrayal pressed heavily upon her conscience, yet she found herself unable to step away from these moments of closeness with Nick. During this period, Jessica's internal struggle intensified. Every day brought a new battle between her professional ethics and her growing feelings for Nick. She would begin each morning with renewed determination to maintain appropriate boundaries, only to find her resolve crumbling the moment she saw him. The emotional affair, though never physically consummated, had taken root in her heart with an intensity that frightened her. Nick's own emotional turmoil mirrored Jessica's. His loyalty to Laura, which had never wavered during their 7 years of marriage, began to show cracks under the pressure of his growing feelings for Jessica. The ease of their connection, the way they understood each other without words, created a powerful draw that became increasingly difficult to resist. He found himself thinking about Jessica during quiet moments, imagining alternative scenarios where they had met under different circumstances. The subsequent months saw Jessica and Nick's paths intersecting with increasing frequency through their collaborative work on various cases. Each new investigation provided another opportunity for them to work closely together, their professional partnership serving as a thin veneer over their deepening emotional entanglement. The tension between them grew more palpable with each interaction, creating an atmosphere charged with unspoken desires and suppressed feelings. Their conversations during these periods became more personal and intimate. The silence between them carried more weight than their words, filled with meaningful glances and lingering moments that spoke volumes about their mutual attraction. Both seemed to be waiting for the other to make the first move, yet neither dared to cross that final line that would transform their emotional affair into something more tangible. April 2019 brought them even closer together through a particularly complex case that demanded their undivided attention. Long nights spent poring over evidence in dimly lit offices created an atmosphere of intimacy that tested their already fragile restraint. During one such evening, as they worked late examining case files, the air between them became thick with unspoken emotions. The moment their eyes met across the desk, both recognized the dangerous precipice they were approaching. The emotional toll of their situation began to weigh heavily on Jessica. Her concentration at work suffered as thoughts of Nick consumed her consciousness. The guilt of harboring such intense feelings for her partner's husband gnawed at her conscience, yet the pull of their connection proved too strong to resist. She found herself caught in an emotional web of her own making, unable to extricate herself from feelings that grew stronger with each passing day. Nick's own struggles paralleled Jessica's. His marriage to Laura, once a source of joy and stability, began to feel like a constraint. The happiness he had known with Laura seemed to pale in comparison to the intense connection he shared with Jessica. Yet his sense of loyalty and commitment held him back from acting on his feelings, creating a constant state of internal conflict. As autumn 2019 approached, Jessica's feelings for Nick had transformed from a simple attraction into an all-consuming obsession. Her emotional state deteriorated as she watched Nick and Laura together, each display of affection between the married couple feeling like a personal affront. The sight of them sharing casual moments, exchanging quiet laughs, or engaging in simple displays of married life filled her with an overwhelming sense of jealousy. This jealousy began to manifest in increasingly dark thoughts about Laura. Jessica's mind started crafting elaborate scenarios where Laura was no longer in the picture. What had begun as fleeting fantasies evolved into more concrete contemplations. She began viewing Laura not just as her police partner, but as an obstacle standing between her and the life she desperately wanted with Nick. Laura's complete obliviousness to the situation only intensified Jessica's resentment. The younger officer continued to trust Jessica implicitly, both as a partner and friend, making Jessica's betrayal even more profound. Yet rather than inspiring guilt, Laura's innocence only fueled Jessica's growing antipathy. Every smile, every friendly gesture from Laura felt like salt in an open wound. Jessica found herself meticulously comparing herself to Laura, constructing elaborate justifications for why she would be better suited for Nick. She convinced herself that she understood Nick in ways Laura never could, that their connection was deeper and more meaningful than the marriage he shared with Laura. These thoughts consumed her daily life, distorting her perspective and judgment. The jealousy festering within Jessica began to affect every aspect of her life. Her once professional demeanor started showing cracks, particularly in her interactions with Laura. She became short-tempered during their shifts together, finding fault with minor issues that she would have previously overlooked. The careful facade she had maintained began to crumble under the weight of her growing obsession. By late 2019, Jessica's obsession had reached a critical point. Her thoughts about Laura's removal had evolved from vague fantasies into more concrete deliberations. The professional part of her mind, honed by years of police work, began analyzing potential scenarios with the same methodical precision she typically applied to criminal investigations. Her police training, ironically, provided her with unique insights into how crimes could be committed and concealed. She began observing Laura's daily routines with a predatory attention to detail, noting her habits, schedule patterns, and the moments when she was most vulnerable. These observations were no longer those of a concerned partner but of someone plotting the perfect crime. The concept of eliminating Laura permanently started to take root in Jessica's mind. Her extensive knowledge of police procedures and investigation methods gave her a dangerous advantage in contemplating how to commit the perfect murder. She understood the intricacies of evidence collection, witness interviews, and crime scene analysis, knowledge that she began to view as tools for her dark purpose. The internal struggle between Jessica's professional ethics and her growing homicidal thoughts created a constant state of tension. Part of her was horrified by these contemplations, recognizing them as a betrayal of everything she had sworn to uphold as a police officer. Yet another part, driven by obsession and jealousy, saw them as logical solutions to what she perceived as an insurmountable problem. By early 2020, Jessica's thoughts had crystallized into a calculated plan. She spent months studying Laura's movements, identifying potential opportunities where an accident could occur. Her position as Laura's partner provided her with countless opportunities to observe and plan, all while maintaining the appearance of a concerned colleague. March 2020 presented the opportunity Jessica had been meticulously planning for. The armed robbery call that came in seemed perfectly aligned with her dark intentions. Her years of experience told her that such high-risk situations provided the perfect cover for orchestrating what would appear to be a tragic accident in the line of duty. In the days leading up to the incident, Jessica maintained a facade of professional detachment. She deliberately distanced herself from Laura, keeping their interactions purely work-related. This calculated withdrawal served a dual purpose, creating an emotional buffer while ensuring that nothing in her behavior would later appear suspicious to investigators. The night before the planned execution of her scheme, Jessica lay awake, mentally rehearsing every detail. Her intimate knowledge of crime scene investigations had helped her craft what she believed to be an undetectable plan. She had considered every angle, every potential question that might arise during the subsequent investigation, preparing answers that would withstand scrutiny. On March 15, 2020, Jessica and Laura responded to the armed robbery call at a convenience store in Dayton, Ohio. The scene appeared exactly as reported, a seemingly straightforward situation involving an armed suspect holding a store clerk hostage. The store's layout, with its narrow aisles and partially obstructed sight lines, provided the perfect setting for Jessica's plan. As they approached the scene, Laura took point, following standard procedure. The suspect, agitated and unpredictable, stood behind the counter with his weapon trained on the hostage. The tension in the air was palpable, creating the chaotic environment Jessica had been waiting for. While Laura focused on de-escalating the situation with the suspect, Jessica positioned herself strategically, her movements calculated and precise. In the critical moment, when the suspect raised his weapon, Jessica executed her plan with cold precision. Taking advantage of Laura's focused attention on the armed robber, she positioned herself perfectly and fired a single shot into her partner's back. The sound of gunfire reverberated through the small store, temporarily masking the true source of the fatal shot. With practiced calculation, Jessica immediately shifted her position and fired toward the suspect, ensuring her shots hit the nearby shelves. The chaos of the moment worked in her favor as the suspect, startled and confused, returned fire wildly. The exchange of gunfire created the perfect cover story, making it appear as though Laura had been caught in crossfire from the suspect's weapon. The aftermath unfolded exactly as Jessica had anticipated. She quickly radioed for backup, her voice carrying the appropriate level of urgency and distress expected from an officer whose partner had just been shot. She knelt beside Laura, performing the expected life-saving measures, all while knowing they were futile. Her hands pressed against the wound, maintaining the appearance of desperate attempts to save her partner's life. Laura's final moments passed quickly as she lay on the convenience store floor. Emergency services arrived promptly, but as Jessica had planned, it was too late. The paramedics could only confirm what she already knew: Laura Mitchell was dead. Throughout the entire scene, Jessica maintained the perfect facade of a distraught partner, her face displaying the appropriate mix of shock, grief, and professional composure. The investigation that followed initially seemed to support Jessica's carefully crafted narrative. The official report documented the event as a tragic accident, noting that Laura had been caught in the crossfire during the exchange with the suspect. The evidence appeared to align with Jessica's account. The suspect had fired his weapon, and in the chaos of the moment, one of his bullets had struck Laura. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly straightforward case, inconsistencies began to emerge. The internal affairs investigators, trained to examine every detail meticulously, started noticing subtle discrepancies in the evidence. The ballistics report revealed something crucial: the trajectory of the bullet that killed Laura didn't match with the suspect's position during the shootout. At first, these inconsistencies were dismissed as minor technical anomalies. But as more forensic evidence came to light, the discrepancies became impossible to ignore. The investigators found Jessica's behavior following the shooting particularly noteworthy. While she displayed the expected signs of grief, there were moments when her composure seemed too perfect, her reactions too calculated for someone who had just witnessed their partner's death. The investigation took a decisive turn when surveillance footage from a nearby store was obtained. While the camera hadn't captured the actual shooting inside the convenience store, it had recorded the crucial moments before and after the incident. The footage revealed something startling: Jessica's positioning during the incident didn't align with her initial statement. She had claimed to be directly behind Laura, returning fire at the suspect, but the video showed her taking a distinctly different position. On April 10, 2020, approximately a month after Laura's death, Jessica was called in for what was presented as a routine follow-up interview. The setting was familiar, the same police station where she had worked for years, but the atmosphere was markedly different. Two internal affairs detectives waited to question her, their demeanor professional but laden with unspoken accusations. The interview began casually enough, with standard questions about the events of that fateful day. Jessica maintained her composure, sticking to the story she had carefully constructed. But when the detectives presented the surveillance footage and pointed out the discrepancies in her account, her carefully maintained facade began to crack. The revelation of the ballistics report, showing conclusively that the fatal bullet couldn't have come from the suspect's gun, delivered the final blow to her deception. In the hours that followed the interview, Jessica's carefully constructed world crumbled completely. The investigators had gathered enough evidence to place her under arrest, charging her with the premeditated murder of her partner. The shocking arrest of a decorated police officer sent ripples through the entire department, shattering the trust and camaraderie that had once defined their unit. The trial that followed became one of the most emotionally charged proceedings in the department's history. The prosecution methodically laid out every detail of Jessica's calculated plan, from her growing obsession with Nick to the final, fatal shot that took Laura's life. The evidence presented painted a clear picture of a woman whose professional judgment had been completely overtaken by dangerous obsession. The forensic evidence proved devastating to Jessica's defense. The ballistics analysis clearly demonstrated that the fatal shot could only have come from her weapon. The surveillance footage revealed her strategic positioning during the incident, showing premeditation rather than the chaos of a shootout. Each piece of evidence further exposed the elaborate deception she had constructed. For Nick Mitchell, the trial proved to be an emotional nightmare. The man who had lost his wife now had to confront the horrifying truth that the person he had grown close to in his grief was actually her murderer. The betrayal cut deeper than anyone could have imagined, leaving him to grapple with both the loss of his wife and the shattering of the comfort he had found in Jessica's presence during his mourning. The courtroom proceedings revealed the full extent of Jessica's obsession. Her calculated manipulation of evidence, her careful positioning during the shooting, and her deliberate exploitation of her police training all pointed to a level of premeditation that shocked even the most seasoned legal observers. On May 24, 2021, the jury returned with their verdict. Jessica Simmons was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led away from the courtroom, her final glimpse of Nick revealed a man completely broken by betrayal, unable to even look in her direction. Behind bars, Jessica was left to contemplate the devastating consequences of her actions. Her obsession had not only destroyed Laura's life and devastated Nick, but it had also irreparably damaged the trust placed in law enforcement officers. She would spend the rest of her days haunted by the choices she had made, while Nick was left to rebuild his life alone, carrying the weight of both betrayal and loss. For our viewers, remember to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. How far would you go for love? When does attraction become dangerous obsession? Join the discussion and don't forget to turn on notifications for more true crime stories that explore the darkest corners of human nature.